Imagine this, you're holding on so tightly to life that your knuckles are turning white. You want the job, the relationship, the recognition. You want to win, to impress, to control the outcome. You chase, you worry, you plan every move with precision, and yet somehow everything keeps slipping through your fingers. What if I told you that the more you force things, the less they work, that the moment you let go, life begins to flow in your favor? This is the strange paradox at the heart of Montaigne's philosophy. The less you care, genuinely care, the more life seems to work in your favor. Not because you're apathetic or passive, but because you stop gripping, you stop obsessing, you stop suffocating possibility with your desperation. Michel de Montaigne, a French philosopher from the 16th century, lived by this principle. He watched the world with curiosity, not attachment. He asked the question most people avoid: why do we cling so tightly to things that only seem to bring us suffering? What he found was beautifully simple. Our obsession with control is what makes us feel out of control. Let that sink in. It's not the circumstances themselves, it's our emotional death grip on how we want them to unfold. Picture this, you're trying to impress someone. Every text you send is overanalyzed. Every smile rehearsed. You're not showing up as yourself, you're showing up as a projection. And guess what? That anxious energy repels. It doesn't attract. Now think of someone relaxed, confident, present. They're not trying, they're simply being. Who do you think draws others in more naturally? This principle applies to every aspect of life: money, relationships, success. The more you chase from a place of fear, the more these things seem to slip away. But the moment you let go, not in laziness but in trust, things start aligning in ways you couldn't have scripted. Montaigne wasn't advocating for carelessness. He wasn't saying don't try. He was saying stop clinging. Stop trying to own the outcome. When you detach from the need for things to go a certain way, you unlock the freedom to actually enjoy the moment. That's where real power begins. There's a psychological trick here known as the law of reversed effort. The harder you try, the worse the result. Think about sleep. The more you try to fall asleep, the more awake you become. Try to be confident, you become painfully self-aware. Try to be happy, you only notice how unhappy you are. Montaigne saw this everywhere. People who schemed, who obsessed, who tried to force the universe to obey their timeline, they were the most miserable. But those who stepped back, who allowed life to unfold, who practiced what we now call relaxed detachment, they found joy without needing to chase it. Let's bring this down to your life. Think of a time you wanted something so badly that it consumed you. A job, a partner, a moment of success. Remember how that desperation pushed it further away. That's because neediness operates from a mindset of lack. You're broadcasting, I don't have this and I need it. The world, like a mirror, reflects that scarcity. Now flip the script. Think of times when you weren't trying, when you were just living, relaxed, present. Opportunities came, people showed up. Things just worked. Why? Because your energy was different. Instead of forcing, you were allowing. Montaigne deeply understood this. He taught that real power doesn't come from needing nothing. It comes from not needing everything. Care, but don't cling. Act, but don't obsess. Do your best, then trust. And here's the irony: when you release the need for control, life responds. It begins to support you in ways you didn't even anticipate. Not because you manipulated the moment, but because you aligned with it. Control doesn't come from white-knuckling your goals. It comes from recognizing that life is fluid, that outcomes are not linear, and that our energy, our inner state matters more than we think. The most magnetic people, the most fulfilled, the most effective, they don't grip. They glide. Montaigne spent years watching people suffer needlessly. They lived in mental prisons, always worried, always chasing, always believing that peace, joy, or love was somewhere just out of reach. But chasing creates distance. It's like standing in a lake trying to scoop water with a clenched fist. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. But relax your hand and the water settles. This is the paradox of effort. Real effort is effortless. It's flowing, not forcing. It's rooted in presence, not anxiety. But most people are trapped in a loop. If I'm not pushing, I must be failing. And Montaigne gently challenged that narrative. The most successful, charismatic, and joyful people, they don't look like they're trying. Because they're not. They've mastered the art of detachment, not apathy, not laziness, but freedom from emotional control. They move through life with a light touch. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop controlling. You stop needing everything to go exactly your way. You stop tying your worth to outcomes. Instead, you begin to live in a state of faith, confidence, flow. And when you do, life gets easier. Opportunities find you. People respect you more. You enjoy your own presence. The endless loop of anxiety dissolves. So ask yourself, what are you gripping too tightly right now? What outcome are you strangling with your expectations? What if you just loosened your grip, not as a form of surrender, but as an act of power? Because sometimes the moment you stop trying so hard is the exact moment everything starts working in your favor. That's the Montaigne mindset, and it might just be the key to peace, success, and freedom in a chaotic world. Stay tuned because we're about to dive even deeper into how to live this principle practically and powerfully in the next section. Let's pick up where we left off, the strange paradox that Montaigne so clearly saw. When you loosen your grip on life, when you stop obsessing over outcomes, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop fighting reality and instead you begin to align with it. That's when power, clarity, and peace enter. But why is this so difficult for most of us? Montaigne acknowledged the truth we all quietly know. Most of our stress isn't caused by what's happening in the world. It's caused by what's happening in our minds. Pause and think about it. How often do you find yourself suffering more in your imagination than in actual reality? How many times has anxiety created problems that never even happened? This is where Montaigne's philosophy becomes liberating. He observed that real suffering doesn't usually stem from life itself. It comes from our resistance to it. In the same way that a rope burns the tighter you pull against it, life becomes more painful the more you cling to what it's not offering. But the moment you surrender that struggle, something shifts. You gain a quiet, confident kind of power. Take relationships, for example. Think about someone who's desperately trying to win love. They overthink every text, analyze every gesture, and walk on eggshells trying to be perfect. But what happens? That intensity, that pressure, it repels. Desperation is loud. It sends a message, I'm not enough. And people can feel that energy even when it's unspoken. Now think of the opposite. Someone who is calm, secure, simply enjoying the moment. They're not trying to impress, they're just being. And because of that, they radiate magnetism. People are drawn to their presence. Why? Because ease is attractive, relaxation is powerful. And this doesn't just apply to relationships. It's true in work, in creativity, in everything. Think back to a time when you were fully present, immersed in a task, a conversation, a project. You weren't forcing anything. You weren't worried about how it would turn out. You were simply there, and ironically, that's when you did your best work. That's when the magic happened. Montaigne saw this pattern again and again. He noticed that those who lived with a light heart, who laughed often, and didn't grip tightly to expectations, they were the ones who thrived. They weren't constantly battling with the chaos of life because they weren't demanding it be anything other than what it was. Here's where the paradox reveals itself. The more relaxed you are, the more life starts to flow in your favor. The universe doesn't respond to control, it responds to alignment. When you move with trust instead of tension, when you let go of desperate chasing, life begins to meet you halfway. Success, love, opportunity, inspiration. They all seem to arrive effortlessly when you're no longer clawing for them. This is not laziness. This is not indifference. It's a higher form of intelligence. It's understanding that the game of life isn't about domination, it's about participation. It's not about forcing outcomes, it's about co-creating with them. Now here's a question. If letting go creates so much clarity to control and success, why do most people still struggle with it? The answer lies in one word: certainty. Your brain is hardwired to crave the known. It finds safety in patterns, predictability, and familiarity, even if what's familiar is actually harmful. This is why people stay in toxic jobs, unfulfilling relationships, and cycles of self-sabotage. Not because it's working, but because it's familiar. To the mind, a painful known is often safer than an unknown possibility. Montaigne noticed this centuries ago. He realized people would rather cling to comforting lies than liberating truths. He wrote that the true source of our suffering is not life, it's our resistance to life. It's the voice in our head that says this shouldn't be happening, instead of asking, how can I respond to what is? So here's the shift. What if you stopped fearing uncertainty? What if you began seeing the unknown not as chaos, but as playground? A place where you're allowed to try, explore, pivot, and grow. Look at artists, look at innovators. The most successful people in history didn't control everything, they mastered the art of adaptation. Leonardo da Vinci didn't box himself into one identity. He flowed between anatomy, painting, engineering, and invention. He followed curiosity, not rigidity. And because of that, he became one of the greatest minds in history. Or take the world's best investors. They don't panic when markets crash. Why? Because they understand the cycle. They expect change. They welcome the unexpected. Their calm isn't based on certainty, it's based on wisdom. Now ask yourself, where are you gripping too tightly in life? Is there a belief you have outgrown but still cling to? An identity you're afraid to shed? A plan that no longer feels aligned but you keep following because it's what you committed to long ago? Montaigne put it perfectly. A man who fears suffering is already suffering from what was he fears. We don't fear reality. We fear losing the illusion of control over it. But here's the transformation. The moment you release your grip on a specific outcome, you shift into a state of power. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop resisting. You start flowing. Let's be honest. Most of our suffering isn't from what's happening, it's from our belief that it should be happening differently. We fight reality, and that fight becomes our stress, our anxiety, our burnout. So what if you stopped? Not in a reckless, careless way, but in an intentional, empowered way. What if you let go of the outcome and focused fully on the process? What if you trusted that the right people, the right moments, the right breakthroughs will come not because you force them, but because you've made space for them? This is not philosophy, this is strategy. And the people who understand this, they don't live in constant chaos, they live in flow. So I'll leave you with this. What's one area in your life where letting go changed everything? Drop it in the comments. And if this message speaks to you, hit that subscribe button. The next chapter is going to take us even deeper into the art of effortless power.